Hello everyone, so my name is Shafeera. I am a PhD student from University Technology of Malaysia. Today, I would like to present about my current research plan, which is a review of electronic waste recycling from behavioral reasoning theory perspective. So basically, e-waste, or we call it as electronic waste, is any electronic appliances that we as a consumer have no intention to use it again. However, currently, e-waste is becoming the world's fastest emerging waste categories, in which it has the highest growth rate, which is about 3% to 5% per year. And for your information, every e-waste does contains 1,000 kind of hazardous substances, in which if it is not properly managed, it will cause harm to the environment as well as to our health. For example, it can cause cancer, it can cause damage to our kidney, our brain, and many more. Apart from that, e-waste also contains valuable substances including gold, silver, aluminium, copper, and many more, in which it can be extracted and resold it again. So to counter with these issues is to recycle our e-waste in a proper way. However, recycling rate in Malaysia is still low. This is because there are several practical problems that have been found. For example, Malaysia are still lagging in disposal awareness. And then the channel that used to disseminate information related to e-waste disposal are still very limited in Malaysia. And then there is no legal framework to make it mandatory to send e-waste to formal facilities in Malaysia. And consumer in Malaysia often sell their old electrical and electronic equipment in second-hand store or dump them in open spaces because perhaps they do not know where they should send their e-waste. And then consumer reluctant to discard their e-waste because they assume that their e-waste are still valuable, and then there is vast quantity of e-waste that have flooded into unauthorized recycling facilities. And then, based from theoretical problem perspective, previous studies always focus on understanding the reason and factors that can influence consumer for engaging in e-waste recycling. For example, most of this study will use such as the most famous one like theory reason action, theory plan of behavior, and many more, in which some of these theory also they have mixed together. However, most of these models are criticized because they focus mainly on the acceptance that related factors, while consumer resistance is mostly ignored. So because of this, consumer resistance and barriers to participating in e-waste recycling are still rarely studied. So because of this, knowledge of consumer willingness to engage in e-waste recycling is still sparse. So scholars, they agreed that there is need to identify, develop, and use newer behavioral model which can provide a more comprehensive picture of the factors that can influence the adoption of and the resistance to certain behavior. So the objective of this study is to review or we investigate consumer facilitators, or we call it as acceptance, as well as inhibitors, or we call it as resistance, to engage with e-waste recycling by utilizing the behavioral reasoning theory. So this is the original framework for behavioral reasoning theory, or we call it as BRT. So BRT is an emerging consumer behavior theory that can provide a comprehensive overview of the different behavioral aspects concerning consumer attention. So if you look at from global motive until attention and behavior, it is just same with theory of planned behavior. This is because BRT is an upgrading version of TPB model. So this BRT model have included two more components, which is belief and value, as well as reason for perform that behavior and reason against to perform that behavior. So this reason cover a wide range of context-specific factors that can help in improving the understanding of behavioral intentions. So this reason can help individuals to justify and defend their action, why they perform this behavior and why they do not perform that behavior. For example, why consumer perform that behavior, maybe because they realize that e-waste has a serious impact to the environment, or maybe because they feel sense of duty to perform that behavior, and maybe a consumer do not perform that behavior because they experience with the inconvenience of recycling, or maybe because they still lack of awareness or knowledge about e-waste recycling. That is why they do not perform that behavior. So from this study, we can investigate the reason why some of the consumer perform that behavior and why some of the consumer do not perform that behavior. So this is framework that I have been proposed, which is for the reason 4, I have divided into 3, which is sense of duty, environmental knowledge, and facility accessibility. And for reason against, I have divided into 3, which is cost of recycling, privacy consent, and inconvenience of recycling. And therefore this framework also, my contribution is I have added 2 more moderators, which is government drivers and economic drivers, in which I want to investigate either this moderator can strengthen the relationship between these 3 global motifs with e-waste recycling intention. So this is the definition for my framework variables. So for environmental value is more to believe the intrinsic motivation to improve environmental quality by activating pro-environmental behavior. So for reason 4, I have divided to 3. Sense of duty is more on conventional responsibility. Environmental knowledge is either consumer have adequate knowledge about recycling. Facility accessibility is more to comfort and convenience to perform that behavior. And then reason against is inconvenience of recycling that behavior. And then cost of recycling means that the more costly the expenditure on e-waste recycling is, perhaps the consumer to the intention of consumer to perform that behavior maybe become weaker. And then the privacy concern can be defined as individual subjective assessment of the e-waste recycling safety, especially information security. So this is attitude. Attitude is more such as consumer feel that e-waste recycling is responsibility, e-waste recycling is such a good and pleasant, and many more. Subjective norm means the pressure from one social circles, which could be positive or negative. Perceived behavioral control relates to the individual confidence towards the possibility of performing that particular behavior despite external or internal constraint. And then moderator, economic driver are the motivation for implementing e-waste recycling because, for example, like incentive and many more. Government driver means government authority regulation or action that can minimize the effect of an offline product on the environment. And then e-waste recycling intention is individual willingness to engage in e-waste recycling. So for research methodology, this study probably will use quantitative approach. Population is Malaysian who age 18 years old and above, who has the buying power of electronic products and have intention to recycle their e-waste. Unit of analysis is individual. Sampling of design is non-probability by using purposive sampling method. Research strategy is by using survey. And for this study also will use pilot tests, pre-test, and common method variables to test the reliability and validity of the questionnaire. And then for data analysis, this study will use structural equation model. So the conclusion of this study is the finding of this study could be beneficial for the electronic manufacturers, government, and policymakers to be better understand the reasons and factors that could be barriers for the consumer to participate in e-waste recycling, as well as factors that can facilitate consumer to participate in e-waste recycling. The study findings also can be relevant to the government and policymaker towards making the e-waste recycling more convenient and can contribute to the formation of the new law and regulation that will enhance recycling effort for a more sustainable ecosystem in the future. And this study also can be used as a resource for other studies undertaking related fields, especially in understanding of the relative influence of facilitators and inhibitors in influencing the intention toward e-waste recycling by introducing a new perspective through BRT model. So thank you so much for listening.